Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, it could be a volatile day on Wall Street as we close out this holiday-disrupted trading week. Investors are bracing for the quarterly event known as triple witching, in which derivatives contracts tied to equities, index options, and futures mature. About $5.5 trillion in options are set to expire. As for yesterday, the AI rally lost steam as the tech-heavy NASDAQ dropped 0.8%. New Edge Wealth Chief Investment Officer Cameron Dawson says tech stocks are at a lofty level.
I'd note with the tech sector, though, we are now as overbought as we have been at any point in recent years. We're trading 27% above our 200-day moving average. The only time we've seen the index trade much above that level was during the final blow-off top phases of the tech bubble in the late 90s. So it's something to watch because we are extraordinarily overbought.
New Edge's Cameron Dawson says while tech stocks may be overbought, they are the one group that has strong earnings momentum.
Well, Nathan, leading the losses yesterday was AI darling NVIDIA. Shares dropped 3.5%. They're down another 2.33% this morning. CEO Jensen Huang unloaded some of his stake in the world's second most valuable company. He sold almost $32 million of shares. And one other note, Paul Wick of Seligman Investments says he's been trimming his holdings of NVIDIA in recent weeks after questioning the company's earnings growth prospects.
Well, another stock on the move this morning, Karen, is Sarepta. Those shares are surging nearly 35%. The drug company's controversial gene therapy has received expanded FDA approval. More from Bloomberg's Doug Krisner.
The treatment is Elevidys. It's used in cases of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Last year, the FDA initially cleared it for use in 4- and 5-year-olds only. Now, the expanded approval means patients 4 years and above can receive the therapy. Initial approval of Elevidys came through an accelerated pathway. It's a shortcut, but it's often based on preliminary data. So a confirmation trial is required. If it doesn't show a benefit, the FDA can pull the treatment from the market. In New York, I'm Doug Krisner, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Doug, thank you. Well, turning to the economy now, add this to bets on the Fed's rate cut plans. Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari says inflation is on the way back down to 2%, but getting there will take a while.
It'll probably take a year or two to get all the way back down to our 2% target. The good news in all of this is that the labor market has remained remarkably strong.
Minneapolis Fed Chief Neil Kashkari says wage growth is still good for workers, but maybe too good to bring inflation down to that target. He spoke at the Michigan Bankers Association annual conference.
Well, Karen, let's turn now to the race for the White House, specifically the fundraising race. The latest figures are in, and the gap may be narrowing in the Biden-Trump rematch. Bloomberg's Steve Potusk has the story from Washington.
For the second month in a row, former President Trump and the Republican National Committee outraised President Biden and the Democrats. The former president took in $141 million in May compared to Biden's $85 million. Trump's fundraising has taken off since his conviction on 34 felony counts in New York. Investor Timothy Mellon gave $50 million to his Make America Great Again PAC the day he was found guilty. President Biden still has a record amount of cash on hand for a Democrat at this point in the cycle. He entered May with $212 million in the bank. Trump and the RNC report $171 million in their war chest. In Washington, Steve Potusk, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Steve, thanks. Well, staying in Washington, we are waiting to hear from the Supreme Court later this morning as the justices prepare to hand down more major decisions. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has a preview.
The justices handed down 4 decisions yesterday, leaving 19 more rulings to issue before the court is expected to recess at the end of the month. Now, among them, a ruling on former President Trump's claim that he is immune from prosecution for alleged crimes committed while in office. And the court is expected to rule on whether states that prohibit social media companies from removing posts based on a political view violate free speech. But there is a lot to do before the court is in recess, so after today, the court has now added this coming Wednesday to hand down more decisions. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, Amy, thank you. ByteDance's TikTok has gone to court to challenge the U.S. forced divestiture legislation. More on that from Bloomberg's Ed Baxter.
In the filing, the company says it has a negotiated 90-page national security agreement signed with the U.S. government to offer multi-layered safeguards and enforcement mechanisms, but says Congress disregarded the agreement and the groundwork when considering the ban. The Justice Department then issued a statement saying that the legislation addresses critical national security concerns in a manner that is consistent with the First Amendment and other constitutional limitations, and says that it will defend the legislation in court. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, and thanks. Well, in banking news, Citigroup CEO Jane Fraser's plans to improve risk controls may have suffered a setback. Bloomberg has learned the bank's blueprint for a hypothetical wind down known as a living will has come up short for a majority of board members on the FDIC. The Federal Reserve would have to make a similar finding for Citi to face a penalty. The bank has been trying to improve its wind down plans for years. The Fed and the FDIC found issues with the plans in late 2022.
And staying in banking, Karen, Japan's Shuken Bank is not ruling out further gyrations to its soured bond investments after the firm warned earlier this week that its losses could swell to $9.5 billion. Japan's biggest agricultural bank surprised the market by saying it would sell $63 billion in low-yielding bonds that had become unprofitable after the firm's shorter-term funding costs jumped. At Shuken's annual meeting, shareholders approved all the bank's resolutions, including the reappointment of management.
And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The heat will remain in the Northeast and Midwest today. In New York City, a heat advisory is in effect from 12 p.m. this afternoon until 8 p.m. Saturday. Temperatures will hit around 95 degrees again as the heat played a factor in causing train delays yesterday. New Jersey Transit and Amtrak service has resumed in and out of Penn Station after a circuit breaker malfunctioned. Earlier this week, low wires caused train delays. This man told ABC 7 he has been late to his job because of it.
I had to get a letter to present to my job for me not to get fired because every week I keep getting late. If I didn't bring this letter today, I'm going to get fired.
In New Hampshire, outdoor workers battled the 90-degree heat. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration conducts checks when they have heat advisories. Joseph LaRose is New Hampshire's OSHA director.
OSHA conducts heat inspections in certain industries like construction, warehousing.
In Philadelphia, a heat emergency has been declared through Saturday and cooling centers are opened. The Pentagon acknowledges Ukraine can expand their strikes into Russia using U.S. weapons. It's a significant change in the Biden administration's limited permission to strike into Russia near Kharkiv. Earlier this week, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan indicated that the U.S. agreed to allow Ukraine to fire into Russia wherever Russian forces were attempting to invade Ukraine. Pentagon Press Secretary General Pat Ryder repeated Sullivan's language during Thursday's Pentagon briefing.
The National Security Advisor put it, in great words here in the sense that it's not about geography, it's about common sense, right? Being able to fire back if you're fired upon.
Meanwhile, Ukraine is experiencing rolling blackouts as Russia intensified strikes targeting energy infrastructure over the past 3 months. New York City is releasing a new $5 billion plan to fix a deteriorating stretch of the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, which carries about 130,000 cars and trucks per day. It is in such poor shape that sensors weigh trucks crossing the deck in real time to prevent heavy vehicles from collapsing the highway. The city's plan would replace a less than half-mile portion of the 75-year-old BQE that hugs the East River south of the Brooklyn Bridge. Known as the Triple Cantilever, it stacks 2 decks on top of each other, both suspended above street level, and is crowned by a pedestrian promenade. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thanks. So we do bring you news throughout the day right here on Bloomberg Radio. But now you can get the latest news on demand whenever you want it. Just subscribe to Bloomberg News Now to get the latest headlines right at the click of a button. Get informed on your schedule. You can listen and subscribe to Bloomberg News Now on the Bloomberg Business app, Bloomberg.com, plus Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Summer begins with the Yankees. Major League best 51-26, but the Orioles are 49-25. Only half game behind with actually one fewer loss at the stadium. Baltimore won 17-5. Orioles had 19 hits, scored in every inning but one, scored 6 in the second when they knocked out Luis Gil. Every Yankee starter this season had gone at least 4 innings. Gil only got 4 outs, gave up 7 runs. He had made 6 starts in May and had only allowed a total of 3 runs. His manager is Aaron Boone.
I mean, obviously he's in the midst of a great year, and this doesn't change that. You know, this is one bump in the road, and frankly, you know, it's always an opportunity to grow and learn from, which he's done a great job all year. You know, he hasn't had, you know, the level, you know, because he's been so dominant. There's still been things in the course of an outing that he's really learned and grown from.
Yanks tonight host Atlanta. Mets visit the Cubs. What a scene last night at 114-year-old Rick Woodfield in Birmingham. MLB honoring the Negro Leagues. 99-year-old Bill Greason, who Black Barons, was a teammate of the late Willie Mays, then became a minister in Birmingham. He threw out the first pitch. Mays' son was there, so was his godson, Barry Bonds. Cardinals won the game, beat the Giants 6-5. And what was not a well-kept secret, the Lakers hiring J.J. Redick as their new coach. Played 15 years, became a broadcaster. He's never coached, but he does do a podcast with LeBron James. He's the 7th different Laker coach in the last 13 years. The Stanley Cup getting some frequent flyer miles. It was in Edmonton, made the long trip to South Florida, now back in Edmonton. And if Connor McDavid and the Oilers beat the Panthers again tonight, the Cup and everyone else headed back to Florida for a Game 7 on Monday. Opening round of the Travelers Golf just south of Hartford, and Tom Kim, who turns 22 today, shot an 862, leads by 2. Scotty Scheffler, the world number 1, who turns 28 today and who struggled last week at the U.S. Open, is only 3 shots behind. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Karen Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on SiriusXM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager. Well, this morning notwithstanding, it's not just the market that's been on a hot streak. So is the actual heat. The first day of summer had around 100 million people across the country dealing with 90-plus degree temperatures. So if it feels like July or August now, what does the rest of the summer have in store for us? For some answers, let's bring in Bloomberg meteorologist Rob Carolyn. Well, first off, Rob, good morning. And where is the worst of this heat wave right now?
Well, the worst of it, Nathan, is going to be the Ohio River Valley and into the northern mid-Atlantic states, the New York City area and western New England. That's where we'll see temperatures again today above 90. You factor in dew points above 70, and it's going to feel like it's 100 to 110 in that region today.
So when can that region, when can the rest of us who have been, you know, really feeling the heat the last few days start to find some relief?
September? It's going to take a while to break this. And I'm serious. The fact that it's starting early, it's going to have the tendency to hang around a while. We've got a big Bermuda high stretching from Tennessee out into the Atlantic. We've heard the term now, heat dome. It's just a typical Bermuda high that's developed early in response to the fact that the western Atlantic is very, very warm. Now, folks in the Great Lakes states today, across northern New York and New England, we'll see a break in the heat. There's a cold front dropping southward out of Quebec that will break the heat there, but it's expected to stall just south of the New York City area out towards Columbus, Ohio, and then Springfield, Illinois. North of it, we'll see lots of showers and thunderstorms this weekend. South of the boundary, though, the heat will persist not only this weekend, but right into next week.
You dropped those words, heat dome, those 2 words we've heard quite a lot over the last few days. Can you explain to us what exactly you mean by heat dome?
Well, it's one of those terms that's now come up, like the polar vortex that we use in the winter to talk about an upper-level low-pressure system that's just been always there during the winter months. It's just a different name for the Bermuda high. So what happens is high pressure sets up off the coast of the southeastern United States in the summer months. We get a broad southwesterly flow that brings hot and humid weather up from the Gulf Coast and pushes it northward into the mid-Atlantic states and then into the Northeast. Usually we see these form June, July, and into September. This one has developed earlier than normal, and it's quite strong. So what we're seeing is that warm, humid air that develops along the Gulf Coast in April and May, moving northward up towards the Canadian border.
Well, why is it forming earlier, Rob? Does that cause concern for you that we're seeing this kind of phenomenon happen this time in the summer?
Well, we really didn't have much in the way of cold weather over the winter, Nathan, because of the El Nino. That displaces the jet stream further north than normal. So we didn't get cool air out over the Gulf of Mexico this winter. It didn't move off the coast of the southeastern United States very much. So the Atlantic and Gulf are very warm, much warmer than they should be this time of year. You find high pressure developing above warm water. So that's why things are developing the way they are this season. We knew, since we're making that transition from the El Nino into a La Nina, that the water temperatures would be warm. Usually those summers are warm, and the forecast is for both June, July, and into August for temperatures to run above normal across much of the country.
So in our last 30 seconds, Rob, I mean, we've been dealing with these above normal temperatures pretty much all week long. Is it normal for hot spells like this to last this long this time of year?
They can. You got to keep in mind, since we're very close to the summer solstice, which was yesterday, the sun gets no stronger than it is right now. The days are very long. If you can set a high up at this time of year, Nathan, you're going to end up with some very warm temperatures, and that's exactly what's happening.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.